Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
Today, we are going to perform what I'd call a forensic audit on the operating system of modern civilization.
A forensic audit. That sounds intense. Are we like serving someone a subpoena?
In a way, yes. We are absolutely serving a subpoena to the last, 200 plus years of economic history. We're using a book called The Age of Resilience by Jeremy Rifkin as our guide.
Okay, Rifkin. But I just want to be really clear for everyone listening. This isn't a book review.
Not at all. We're not here to talk about his prose or, give it a star rating.
Right. We don't do reviews. We do deep dives. We're using this book as a lens, as a tool to see a system that's usually invisible.
Exactly. We're trying to map what you could call the architecture of fragility.
Mm.
We want to get our heads around why the world feels so brittle right now.
Yes. Brittle is the perfect word. Like, why is one ship getting stuck in a canal suddenly mean the shelves at your local store are empty? It makes no sense.
Or why a virus in one city can grind car factories in Detroit to a halt. These things feel like weird, random accidents.
But they're not.
They're not. And to understand why, we have to unpack this thing Rifkin calls the industrial efficiency paradigm. I mean, it's the water we swim in. It's this invisible script that governs, how we work, what we eat, how we even define success.
Okay, industrial efficiency paradigm. That's a mouthful. Can you break that down for me? Because on the surface, efficiency sounds like a good word. I want my life to be efficient.
Of course you do. Everyone does. And that's the core tension we really have to explore today. Efficiency is great. It means less waste. It means getting more for less.
Right.
But Rifkin's argument is that we've elevated efficiency, with a capital E, to a kind of theology. It's become the single godlike metric for all human progress.
A theology, that's a strong word.
It is. But think about it. What is the actual definition of this paradigm? It's the relentless quest to optimize the expropriation, consumption, and discarding of natural resources.
Okay, hold on. Expropriation, consumption, discarding. When you put it like that, it sounds less like good business and more like organized looting.
And that right there is the crisis in perception we're tackling. We see all the benefits of efficiency, cheap clothes, next day delivery, strawberries in December, but we are completely blind to the cost.
We don't see the full balance sheet.
Not even close. We don't see that by optimizing for speed and for leanness, we have systematically engineered out our ability to withstand a shock. We've removed the buffers.
Because we have no fat left in the system.
Zero. And in a crisis, fat is your fuel, fat is your protection. We have designed a global system that is like a world-class athlete with 0% body fat. Looks great, but one missed meal and it collapses.
So the mission for this deep dive is to trace how we got here, to understand the design.
Exactly. We're going to trace the line from the design, the philosophical bedrock, to the incentives, how the money flows, and finally to the outcomes, the fragility and breakdown we're all experiencing.
And we're going to look at how this whole system tries to basically cheat the laws of physics.
It really does. It's built on a fantasy. And then we'll look at the shift. Because whether we're ready for it or not, the age of efficiency is, it's ending. The age of resilience is forcing its way in.
And I'm guessing that doesn't just mean we all start, churning our own butter and living off the grid.
No, not at all. It's actually incredibly high-tech. But it demands a fundamentally different relationship with time, with nature, and with each other.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then, the design. Where does this all begin? You said 200 years, but it sounds like the roots go even deeper.
They go way deeper. To really get the soul of efficiency, we have to go back to the Age of Progress. And for that, we have to go to France, 1794,
Right.
in the middle of the French Revolution.
Okay, so guillotines, chaos, the reign of terror. Not exactly a hopeful time.
Absolute chaos. And in the middle of all this, there's this philosopher, a guy named Nicolas de Condorcet. He's an aristocrat, an intellectual, and the revolutionaries are hunting him. He's literally hiding in a tiny attic, just waiting for that knock on the door that he knows will lead to his execution.
Wow. Talk about writing under pressure.
And while he's sitting there, waiting to die, he writes this incredibly, almost pathologically optimistic book. He writes about the indefinite perfectibility of man.
That is completely counterintuitive. The world is on fire, I'm about to be beheaded, but hey, humanity's future is looking bright.
It's the ultimate statement of the Enlightenment project, isn't it? He argues that humanity, through reason and science, is on this unstoppable linear path of improvement, that we can detach ourselves from the limits of the natural world.
So nature is just an obstacle. It's a problem to be solved or overcome.
It's even more than that. This idea fuses with the much older biblical dominion narrative.
Hmm.
The idea that humans are separate from and superior to nature, and that our job is to subdue it.
To tame it.
Yes. And this creates a worldview where the Earth is seen not as a living system, not as our home, but as a
A
warehouse.
giant warehouse full of free stuff.
Exactly. A warehouse of raw materials just sitting there, waiting to be unlocked by human ingenuity. And if the Earth is just a warehouse, what is the prime directive of your economic system?
To empty the warehouse as fast as possible.
And turn it into something we call wealth. This is where Rifkin makes a really critical point. Efficiency is fundamentally a temporal value.
Temporal, so it's about time.
It is entirely about time. Efficiency is the war against time. It's about eliminating friction to speed up every single economic activity. We want to shrink the time between cutting down a tree and selling a chair. Shrink the time between planting a seed and eating the bread.
It's like we're trying to speed run reality itself.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
And the man who really weaponized this philosophy, the guy who operationalized this conquest of time, was an American named Frederick Taylor.
Ah, yes. Taylorism. Scientific management. I remember learning about him in school, but it was always so dry. Just, he made factories run faster.
But it was so much more visceral and, frankly, more brutal than that. Taylor was, for lack of a better word, obsessed with the control. He would walk into a late 1800s factory, and he saw what he considered to be chaos. He saw workers moving at their own pace, using their own judgment. He saw craft, rhythm.
And to him, that was inefficient.
To him, it was theft. He literally believed that any moment a worker wasn't producing at their absolute maximum physical capacity, they were stealing profit from the owner. So he brought in his tool,
The famous stopwatch.
the stopwatch. He'd stand over a worker, say, a guy shoveling pig iron into a furnace, and he would time every single motion, lift, step, turn, dump, every part of it. Then he'd break it down and optimize it.
So he'd say, you're taking too long on the turn part of the movement.
Precisely. He'd say, if you eliminate that little pause you take to adjust your grip, you save 0.4 seconds. If you do that 1,000 times a day, the company gains 400 seconds of production. He was programming humans.
It's completely dehumanizing. He's treating a person like a badly coded piece of software that needs to be debugged.
That was his explicit goal. He said he wanted to remove all brain work from the shop floor. The thinking was for the managers in the office. The doing was for the workers. The human being becomes just an appendage to the machine, a component.
But the thing is, it worked. I mean, from a production standpoint.
Oh, it worked spectacularly. Productivity went through the roof. This is how we got the mass-produced world. But at what cost? He deliberately stripped out what he called idiosyncrasies.
Idiosyncrasies. You mean like being a person, having your own way of doing things.
Exactly. In a machine, an idiosyncrasy is the bug. It's a flaw. It creates friction. But in any living biological system, variation is the raw material of adaptation. It's how you survive.
So by stripping out all the variation to maximize speed, Taylor made the system incredibly powerful, but also incredibly stupid.
Brittle.
Brittle and stupid. And this is the part that's so important. This thinking didn't stay in the factory. It escaped. It colonized our minds. It became the template for organizing everything.
How do you mean?
Well, look at our modern education system. What is it? It's pure Taylorism. You have standardized tests. You have bells ringing every 45 or 50 minutes to signal the students, who are the raw material, to move in batches to the next workstation for the next procedure.
I've never thought about the school bell as a factory whistle, but my God, it is. We're literally processing children on an assembly line. Inject algebra at Station B.
It's everywhere. It even infected the early conservation movement. You think of someone like Teddy Roosevelt and you think, save the national parks.
Right, the great conservationist. But their argument, the argument of his chief forester, Gifford Pinchot, wasn't nature is sacred and has intrinsic value. Their argument was about efficient use. They wanted to manage the nation's forests scientifically, like a factory, to ensure a steady, reliable supply of lumber for the economy.
So even the environmentalism was industrial. It wasn't about protecting nature. It was about managing inventory.
It was about sustaining the warehouse. And all of this brings us to the fundamental design flaw, the deep, deep crisis in perception that sits at the very heart of modern economics. We built this entire, magnificent, fragile edifice on the wrong laws of physics.
Okay, you're going to have to walk me through this. My high school physics is rusty. We built it on Newtonian physics, right?
Correct. When you think of Newton, think of a clock or a pendulum. It's a mechanical universe. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Things move, but the system itself doesn't fundamentally change. It always seeks equilibrium.
Okay, balance. It's all about balance.
And that's exactly how classical economics views the market. It's a pendulum of supply and demand. If prices go up, demand goes down, and eventually things swing back and settle at a nice, neat equilibrium point. It's seen as this reversible, mechanical, closed loop that can just go on forever.
But you're saying that's not the world we actually live in.
It's not even close. We don't live in a mechanical world. We live in a thermodynamic world.
Thermodynamics? Okay, so this is about heat and energy. Entropy.
It's all about entropy. The second law of thermodynamics, this is, maybe the most fundamental law of the universe.
The things fall apart law.
That's a decent shorthand, yeah. More accurately, it states that energy always flows in one direction, from a usable, ordered state to an unusable, disordered state, from low entropy to high entropy.
So like a piece of coal.
A piece of coal is the perfect example.
Yeah.
It's a concentration of ancient sunlight. It's highly ordered, low entropy, useful energy. You burn it, you get some useful work out of it, heat, electricity, but you also get ash, smoke, and waste heat.
High entropy.
Disordered waste.
And you can never, ever turn that ash and smoke back into a lump of coal.
Never. The process is irreversible. You have permanently moved from value to waste. Now, here is the billion-dollar problem. Standard economics, the kind that calculates GDP, has no column in its ledger for entropy.
What do you mean by that?
When we calculate our gross domestic product, our measure of growth, we count all the value of the goods and services produced. We count the money made from selling the electricity from that coal, but we do not subtract the permanent, irreversible loss of the coal itself or the cost of the pollution.
So we're treating the Earth's resources as if they're just income, not capital. Like it's a checking account with an infinite balance.
We're burning the furniture to heat the house, and we're recording the heat as a profit on the books. It's an accounting fiction. Rifkin uses this amazing illustration of the 300 trout to show just how profound this blindness is.
Oh, I loved this part in the book. The math is a little staggering, though. Walk us through that trout pyramid.
Okay, so let's just think about a simple food chain. To sustain one human being for 1 year, ecologically, you'd need that person to eat roughly 300 trout.
Okay, 300 fish. I can picture that.
But those trout have to eat, right? They don't just appear out of nowhere. To sustain that population of 300 trout, they need to consume something like 90,000 frogs over the course of the year.
90,000 frogs. We're already at a pretty staggering number of frogs.
And it keeps going. To sustain those 90,000 frogs, they need to eat about 27 million grasshoppers.
27 million. Okay, my brain can't even really visualize that number.
And to feed those 27 million grasshoppers, they need to consume roughly 1,000 tons of grass.
So just to keep one of me alive at the top of this pyramid, nature has to process 1,000 tons of raw material at the bottom.
Exactly. And here's the thermodynamic kicker. At every single one of those steps, from the grass to the grasshopper, the hopper to the frog to the trout to you, a massive amount of energy is lost as waste heat, just by being alive. Metabolism, movement, digestion, reproduction. The second law is always taking its cut. Only a tiny fraction of the energy that was in the grass actually makes it all the way up the pyramid to become part of you. From an industrial engineering perspective, it's wildly inefficient.
But our economy,
Yeah.
our economic system, it only sees the trout. It just slaps a price tag on the fish and says, that's $5.99 a pound.
Precisely. It is completely blind to the 1,000 tons of grass. It ignores the entire energetic foundation. It treats the biosphere as a free, infinite substrate for our activities. And the problem is, it's not infinite. And because our efficiency model is designed to strip mine the base of that pyramid faster and faster to feed the very top, the whole structure is becoming terrifyingly unstable.
It's like we're playing a game of Jenga with the ecosystem. We keep pulling out the foundational blocks, the soil, the water, the insects, to build our tower just a little bit higher.
And at some point, you pull out one block too many, and the whole thing comes crashing down. Gravity always wins. And so does entropy. That brings us to section 2, incentives and outcomes. This is where we see the architecture of fragility in action.
Right, because it's not just that we're using resources. It's the way the system is organized that makes it so brittle. We've built it this way.
We have. And, it's important to say that the people who built this system, the managers and the CEOs, they weren't like mustache-twirling villains trying to destroy the planet. They were just responding rationally to the incentives they were given.
Right. If you're running a public company, your legal fiduciary duty is to maximize shareholder value.
And how is that value measured?
Quarter by quarter. Did we make more profit in this 3-month period than the last one?
Short-termism. You are trapped in an incredibly narrow time horizon. You simply cannot go to your board and say, hey, I'm going to make less money this year so that our company will be more resilient and still exist in 10 years. You'd be fired.
So the incentive is to cut costs. Now, today.
Which brings us to lean logistics. This has been the absolute gospel of business schools for the last 40 years. You strip every ounce of fat from the system. You look at your warehouse. If you see a pallet of spare parts just sitting there, what does an accountant see?
I'd see a safety net, a buffer, a backup plan.
The accountant sees idle capital. They see waste. Why are we paying rent to store parts we aren't using this exact minute? Get rid of them. Switch to just-in-time delivery. Let's have the truck with the part show up at the factory door the very second we need to bolt it onto the car.
I mean, I have to play devil's advocate. Just in time sounds amazing when it works. It's the reason we have cheap consumer goods. It lowers overhead. It makes the company more agile.
It's brilliant in a perfectly predictable, stable, Newtonian world. But we don't live in that world. We live in an entropic, chaotic, unpredictable world. And by eliminating all that redundancy, you have eliminated resilience.
Efficiency is the enemy of resilience.
That is the central thesis. That is the bumper sticker for this entire deep dive. Resilience requires buffers. It requires redundancy. It requires diversity. And efficiency sees all of those things as waste to be eliminated.
So we traded security for speed and a lower price tag.
We did. And we can see the consequences everywhere. Let's take the semiconductor crisis as a case study. It is the perfect, heartbreaking example of where this logic inevitably leads.
Oh, the Ford F-150s. I remember seeing these pictures online, these vast parking lots, just seas of brand new pickup trucks.
Thousands and thousands of them ready to go.
But they couldn't be sold. They just sat there.
Oh.
And the reason was they were missing one tiny little microchip.
A chip that might cost $1, maybe less. Ford, this titan of American industry, lost billions of dollars in revenue. They had to halt production lines. They sent workers home, all because of a tiny piece of silicon they couldn't get.
So how did that happen? I mean, Ford is a massive corporation. How did they not see this coming? How did they not have a stockpile of chips?
Because stockpiling is inefficient, and because of the logic of hyper-efficiency. Over the last couple of decades, the semiconductor industry consolidated dramatically. It costs tens of billions of dollars to build a modern chip foundry. It's incredibly capital intensive.
So the market logic says, don't have 50 small factories. That's inefficient.
Let's have 3, maybe 4 massive ones.
Yeah.
It's economies of scale. So what happened? Global production became hyper-concentrated in just a couple of places, mainly Taiwan, with the company TSMC, and South Korea with Samsung. It was cheaper. It was more efficient. But it created these catastrophic single points of failure.
So when the pandemic hit,
Everything broke at once. The pandemic hit, demand for consumer electronics went through the roof because everyone was suddenly working from home. At the same time, Taiwan had a historic drought, and chip making uses astronomical amounts of ultra-pure water. Then there was a fire at a factory in Japan. Then global shipping lanes clogged up.
and because there was no backup factory in Ohio or Germany that could pick up the slack,
The entire global system seized up. The lean supply chain didn't just bend, it shattered. And it wasn't just cars, it was everything. Medical devices, washing machines, servers. The system was designed for maximum efficiency in a perfect world, which meant it was also designed for maximum fragility in the real world.
it's terrifying. It's like we built our entire global house without any insulation or a furnace because for a while the weather was perfectly stable at 72 degrees.
And now a storm has arrived. And it's not just one storm. This brings us to agriculture, the almond monoculture.
This one really gets me because I drink almond milk. I feel personally implicated in this.
I think we all are. It's part of the system. But get this. Something like 80% of the entire world's supply of almonds is grown in one place, California's Central Valley.
80%. That is just statistically insane. Why would you put all your eggs, or I guess nuts, in one single basket?
Efficiency. It's cheaper to centralize. You have all the processing plants in one place, all the specialized harvesting equipment, all the expert labor. You create a powerful, efficient hub.
But nature absolutely despises monocultures.
Nature thrives on diversity. When you plant millions of acres of just one type of tree, you are rolling out a welcome mat for pests and diseases. You are sucking the soil dry of the specific nutrients that one plant needs. and you create an unbelievable pollination problem.
The bees. This is the part that sounds like science fiction.
Almond trees are not self-pollinating. They need bees. But there are nowhere near enough native or wild bees in the Central Valley to pollinate 80% of the world's almonds. So every single spring, we have the largest managed migration of livestock on the entire planet.
We're trucking bees across the country.
Billions of them. They're loaded onto flatbed trucks, in hives, in places like Florida and the Dakotas, and driven 2,000 miles to California for a few weeks.
That just can't be good for the bees.
It's catastrophic for them. The stress, the diesel fumes, and then forcing them onto a monoculture diet that can only eat almond pollen for weeks on end. It decimates their immune systems. It's a massive contributor to colony collapse disorder.
So in our hyper-efficient quest for cheap almonds, we are systematically destroying the very pollinators the entire agricultural system depends on.
Yes. And it gets worse. Almonds are an incredibly thirsty crop. And where is the Central Valley located?
In California, a state that is in a near-permanent state of drought and wildfire.
Exactly. So we are draining ancient aquifers, water that took millennia to accumulate, to grow a luxury crop in a desert, relying on sick bees that we have to truck in from thousands of miles away. It is the very definition of a fragile, unsustainable system.
So why do they keep doing it? At some point, you have to see the writing on the wall.
Structural persistence. The immediate incentives have not changed. The almond grower has a mortgage to pay on his land and a loan on his tractor. The Global Food Corporation has a contract to fulfill with a supermarket chain. The system is locked into this behavior because the short-term financial feedback profit is much louder and more immediate than the long-term ecological feedback collapse.
So we've designed and optimized a system for a world that no longer exists.
We optimize for the Holocene. That 10,000-year period of unusual geological and climatic stability that allowed human civilization to flourish. The weather was predictable, the seasons were reliable, it was easy to be efficient, because you could reasonably assume next year would look a lot like last year.
But we're not in the Holocene anymore.
No. Many scientists say we are now in the Anthropocene, an age of instability that we ourselves have created, the rewilding Earth, as Rifkin calls it. The future is volatility. More storms, more droughts, more floods, more pandemics.
So the operating system we're running, the efficiency OS, is fundamentally incompatible with the new hardware of the planet.
Perfectly put. Which brings us to the great pivot, Section 3, the shift from efficiency to adaptivity.
Okay, so this is the what now part of the conversation. If the age of efficiency is dying, what comes next? We have to move into an age of resilience. But what does that really mean, practically? How does the shift from efficiency to adaptivity change society?
Well, on a deep level, it changes what Rifkin calls our temporal choreography.
Choreography. Like a dance. That's an interesting metaphor.
It is. In the age of progress and efficiency, we tried to force nature to dance to our rhythm. We try to make it faster. We use synthetic fertilizers to force plants to grow on our schedule, not their own. We used industrial processes to preempt nature.
Preempt, as in, I'm going to stop the river from flooding by building a giant concrete dam so I can build my houses where I want.
That is classic preemption. It's a strategy of control. Adaptivity is a fundamentally different dance. Adaptivity says the river is going to flood. That's what rivers do. I can't control it. So I am going to design my city with floodplains and green spaces that can absorb the water. I will work with the river.
So instead of trying to stop the wave, you learn how to surf it.
It's moving from a mindset of prediction and control to one of anticipation and adaptation. And to do that, you need a completely new kind of infrastructure. Rifkin calls this the third industrial revolution.
Okay, let's break that down. What were the first two, just to set the stage?
The first industrial revolution was 19th century Britain. It ran on coal, and its technologies were the steam engine and the printing press. It was centralized. You needed huge amounts of capital to build a railroad.
And the second?
The second was 20th century America. It ran on oil, and its technologies were the internal combustion engine and the telephone. Also very centralized. You had big oil, big auto, Ma Bell, top-down vertical power structures.
Okay, so what makes the third industrial revolution different?
It's different in its very architecture. It's not centralized and vertical. It's distributed and lateral. It's not proprietary. It's open source. And it sits on a convergence of three internets.
Three internets, okay, what are they?
First, you have the communication internet, which we already know, 5G, fiber optics, the cloud. Second, an emerging energy internet. And third, a nascent mobility and logistics internet.
So how do those three things connect to create this new system?
Okay, picture your house in, say, 10 or 15 years. You have solar panels on your roof. That's your node on the energy internet. You're generating your own power.
Right, but the sun doesn't shine at night.
Correct. So your house is connected to a smart grid via the 5G communication internet. Your home's AI is constantly talking to the grid, negotiating energy prices. It might say, hey, I have excess power right now. I'll sell it back to the neighborhood, or I need to dry some power.
So my house becomes like a mini power plant. A prosumer, I think is the term.
Exactly. A producer and a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Now add the third layer, the mobility internet. Your electric car is parked in the garage. What is that car? It's a giant battery on wheels.
A storage device.
A huge storage device. So during peak demand in the afternoon, the grid might actually pay you to draw a few kilowatt hours of power from your car's battery to help stabilize the neighborhood grid. Then, late at night, when wind power is abundant and cheap, it automatically recharges your car for the next day.
It's a collaborative network. There's no single central power plant dictating everything.
It's a distributed, intelligent, adaptive commons. And the technology that really stitches all of this together is the Internet of Things, or IoT.
Now, hold on. When I hear IoT, I just think of my smart toaster or a fridge that tells me I'm out of milk. It all feels a bit gimmicky.
And that's the trivial, consumer-facing version of it. The real potential of IoT is to create a planetary nervous system.
A planetary nervous system. That sounds like something out of science fiction.
But think about what it is. It's about embedding sensors everywhere, billions of them. Sensors in the soil, monitoring moisture levels and nutrient content in real time. Sensors in forests, monitoring for fire risk. Sensors on bridges, monitoring structural integrity. Sensors in the ocean, monitoring acidity. We are building a digital skin for the Earth.
And all that real-time data allows us to adapt instead of just preempting.
That's the key. If you're a farmer in this new system, you don't just water your crops on a fixed schedule, because that's efficient. Your sensors tell you precisely which plants need water and how much right now. You synchronize your economic activity with the actual real-time needs of the biosphere.
That makes sense. But what about the economics? How do you build a business model around this? You mentioned a concept in the book called zero marginal cost.
This is the idea that really fundamentally breaks the logic of 20th century capitalism.
Breaks capitalism. That's a pretty big claim.
Well, let's look at it. What is marginal cost? It's the cost of producing one additional unit of a good or service after you've already paid for your fixed costs, like your factory and equipment.
Okay, so if I own a bakery, my fixed costs are the oven and the rent. The marginal cost is the flour and sugar for the very next loaf of bread.
Exactly. Now, in the first and second industrial revolutions, marginal cost was always a significant number. It always cost you more fuel to generate the next kilowatt hour of electricity. It always costs you more paper and ink to print the next book.
But with renewable energy.
What's the marginal cost of the next hour of sunshine?
It's free, so zero.
It's near zero. What's the marginal cost of sending one more email or streaming one more video? Near zero. If you're 3D printing a replacement part using recycled materials and solar power, the marginal cost of making one more gets vanishingly small.
And if something is free or close to free, you can't really build a traditional market around selling it. The profit margin disappears.
It evaporates. This dynamic pushes the economy away from a model of ownership and towards a model of access.
Can you unpack that difference?
Sure. In a world of scarcity and high marginal cost, it makes sense for me to own a car. I need it, and it's an expensive asset. But in a world of networked autonomous electric vehicles with near zero marginal cost per trip, do I need to own one? Or do I just need convenient, cheap access to one whenever I need it?
It's the difference between my old CD collection and my Spotify subscription.
That's the perfect analogy. We are shifting from seller-buyer markets to provider-user networks. And we're shifting our primary economic metric from productivity, how much stuff can we churn out per hour, to regenerativity, how effectively are we restoring and enhancing the health of the system we depend on.
This all sounds incredible, but maybe a little utopian. I mean, it relies on a huge shift in human behavior towards sharing and collaboration. Aren't we fundamentally selfish creatures?
That's the story we've been telling ourselves for centuries. The story of the autonomous, rational, self-interested individual. But modern biology is telling a very, very different story. And this brings us to section 4, nested systems.
Right. This is where we get into the really deep stuff. Biology, consciousness, identity.
It feels squishy, but it's actually hard science. The entire Enlightenment project was built on the myth of the autonomous individual. The idea that I am a self-contained entity. I am separate from you. I am separate from nature. My skin is a wall.
I think, therefore I am. A discrete, separate being.
But look at the actual biology. Your body is not a fortress. It's a semi-permeable membrane. You are in constant dynamic exchange with your environment. You breathe in the atmosphere, you eat the biosphere, you drink the hydrosphere.
Our cells are constantly turning over.
Constantly. The you of 10 years ago, on a purely physical cellular level, does not exist anymore. You're more like a river than a statue. The form persists, but the substance is always changing.
An identity crisis is brewing.
And then it gets even weirder. There's the microbiome. Scientists now estimate that more than half the cells in and on your body are not human at all. They are bacteria, fungi, viruses. You aren't an individual. You are a walking, talking ecosystem.
So the pronoun I is actually a biological fiction. It should be we.
It's a we. You are a nested system, a community living within a larger community. And truly understanding this, truly feeling it, is what gives rise to a new kind of consciousness. And this is the answer to the question. What is biophilia consciousness, and how does it affect our survival?
Biophilia, the love of life.
E.O. Wilson coined the term. It's our innate, evolved, empathetic connection to other living systems. But it's not just, a fuzzy feeling you get from hugging a tree. It's a rational recognition of our nested reality. Because you are a semi-permeable system, your personal survival is inextricably linked to the survival of the larger system you're embedded in.
So it's a form of enlightened self-interest. I have to care about the health of the bees and the soil, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because if they collapse, I collapse.
That's it, exactly. The Internet of Things gives us the real-time data feedback from the planet. Biophilia consciousness provides the empathy to act on that data. It's about expanding our circle of identity, our sense of family, from our immediate kin to our tribe, to our nation-state, and ultimately to the entire biosphere.
But how does that kind of consciousness translate into politics and governance? Because our current political systems seem built on the exact opposite principles: separation, competition, and zero-sum games.
That's because our political map is a dangerous fiction. Look at any map of the world. What do you see?
You see brightly colored countries with sharp, clear borders between them.
Arbitrary lines on a piece of paper, mostly drawn by wars and colonial ambitions. Nature recognizes none of them. A watershed doesn't stop at a national border. The atmosphere doesn't carry a passport.
So that leads to the next big question. Explain the role of bioregional governance in a resilient future.
If we want our societies to be adaptive and resilient, our governance structures have to align with ecological reality, not historical accidents. Rifkin argues for a shift away from the nation-state towards what he calls bureaucracy in bioregions.
Bureaucracy, like peer-to-peer networks.
Exactly. Instead of the top-down, centralized model of representative democracy, where you elect someone to go to a far-off capital city to make decisions about your local ecosystem, you move to a model of distributed, networked citizen assemblies managing their own bioregions.
Okay, I have to push back on that a little. That sounds potentially very chaotic, like a planet-sized homeowners association. People can barely agree on what color to paint a fence. How are they supposed to cooperatively manage an entire watershed?
It would be chaotic if you tried to do it with 20th century technology and consciousness. But remember the infrastructure of the third industrial revolution. These communities have the real-time data from the IoT. They can see the health of their soil and water. And most critically, they have their own distributed energy.
The solar panels on their roofs?
Right. Think about the geopolitics of the fossil fuel age. You needed massive, centralized governments with powerful militaries. Why? Because you had to secure oil fields halfway around the world. You needed a navy to protect the tanker routes. Oil and coal are concentrated resources, and they lead to concentrated political power.
But the sun and the wind are everywhere. They're distributed.
They are inherently democratic. If my community can generate its own power, process its own waste, and grow a good portion of its own food, our dependence on that centralized Leviathan state begins to shrink. We can take on the stewardship of what Rifkin calls the 19-kilometer sphere.
That's a specific term he uses. What does it refer to?
It's a way to visualize just how fragile our living space is. The biosphere, the only place in the entire known universe that we know for sure harbors life, is an incredibly thin film. From the bottom of the deepest ocean trenches to the top of the ozone layer, it's only about 19 kilometers thick.
That's less than a half-hour drive on the highway. It's nothing.
You shrink the Earth down to the size of an apple. The biosphere is thinner than the waxy skin on that apple. That's it. That's all we have. Bioregional governance is about communities taking direct responsibility for stewarding their little patch of that precious skin, the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere in their immediate area.
It's moving from abstract global governance to tangible Earth governance.
But a return to managing the commons, but empowered with 21st century technology and a biophilic consciousness.
So if we have the technological roadmap and we have this emerging philosophical and biological understanding, why isn't it happening faster? Why does it feel like we're still stuck in the old model, driving that F-150 straight towards a cliff?
And that's the final piece of the puzzle, Section 5, structural persistence.
The inertia of the old world, it's just heavy.
It's incredibly sticky. You have trillions and trillions of dollars of capital sunk into the old fossil fuel infrastructure. You have an entire global education system that is still churning out managers and engineers trained in Taylorist efficiency.
The business schools are still teaching Efficiency 101 as the only way.
And the accounting standards. As long as our official accounting systems treat the destruction of the natural world as an externality, a cost that doesn't show up on the corporate balance sheet, then it will always be seen as profitable to destroy the biosphere. The incentives are still logged in.
This brings us to the final crucial analysis for this deep dive. We have to explicitly address the crisis in perception.
We do. What is the crisis in perception in this case? At its core, it is the failure to see the connections. It's a crisis of fragmentation.
Explain that.
Okay, so what is being misperceived? We watch the news and we see economic events, inflation, supply chain shortages, a stock market crash, and we put them in one box. Then we see environmental events, a record-breaking flood, a catastrophic wildfire, a new pandemic, and we put those in a completely different box.
We treat them like they're in different channels. One's the business report, the other is the science report.
Exactly. So what structural layer is being obscured by this fragmentation? The underlying operating system, the industrial efficiency paradigm. We fail to see that these are not separate categories of events. They are two symptoms of the same disease. The relentless, obsessive pursuit of hyper-efficiency in our economy directly and inevitably manufactures the fragility in our environment and society.
We're so focused on optimizing one part of the machine that we don't see we're breaking the entire machine in the process.
And that's why surface-level interpretation fails. Because if you see these as separate problems, your solutions will always be superficial. You try to fix inflation by raising interest rates. You try to fix the flood by building a higher seawall. You're just putting Band-Aids on the symptoms while the underlying disease gets worse. You never touch the source code of the system.
So finally, how does systems analysis change what becomes visible?
It makes the connections visible. It reveals that adaptivity is not some soft, feel-good buzzword. It's not a luxury. It is a structural necessity for survival in the 21st century. It shows us that all those things that the old paradigm called inefficiencies, the redundancy, the local sourcing, the slack in the system, the buffers, are not waste. They are our species insurance policy.
They are the cost of resilience, the price of admission for living on a complex, dynamic, and now volatile planet.
That's it. The whole project of the Age of Progress was an attempt to conquer time through speed and efficiency. We tried to beat the clock. The challenge of the Age of Resilience is to learn how to inhabit time through synchronization and rhythm.
We have to learn to keep time with the planet, not beat it.
Rhythm, not a race.
Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a shorter visual overview of this topic, see the mini explainer linked in the description. If you enjoyed this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.